Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Finance and Audit Committee meeting for August the 13th, 2020. Welcome, everybody. We have committee members today here, Nancy Miller and Ernie Camacho, along with myself, Tom Richards, which is a full complement for this committee. We welcome you all, and following our normal procedure, we will begin this morning with any public comments. And do we have any, Justin?
Good morning. I'm going to go over the instructions for public comment just to give all the attendees the instructions on how to provide public comment. So welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today we are hosting this meeting via Zoom. In a moment we will take public comment. Instructions for public comment by Zoom. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature typically located at the bottom of your screen so that I can call on you to provide your comment. Public comment by phone instructions. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing *9 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in queue and your name is called in the web meeting, please click prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide comments. Our court reporter is on the line to record these comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. You will hear the timer beeping once you go over your 2 minutes. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to the meeting. And that is the instructions. As of now, none of the attendees have raised their hand, but we'll give them a minute or so to enable that function.
Okay, thank you. I think we have 3 people that had registered. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm wondering if what we'll go ahead and do, if we go ahead and move forward with the meeting, are you able to tell when they come, when any of the 3 who've registered, if there's more 3 than 3, whatever, will you be able to tell that they have come on board, and we can then recognize them in between agenda items?
Yeah, we can monitor the attendees as they join the meeting.
Okay. There are still none, is that correct?
Yes, as of now, they haven't joined, and no attendees are raising their hand for public comment.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and move forward with our agenda this morning. The first agenda item is to consider the approval of our June 25th committee meeting minutes. And unless there are any requests for changes, additions, or deletions, can we have a motion for approval of the June minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Camacho and seconded by Director Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2 this morning is just remarks of initiatives and updates by the chair. I'm only going to not necessarily steal Joe's thunder. I had a short conversation with Chief Operating Officer Hedges just before the meeting. And I just would like to state to the committee members that beginning with next month's F&A package, all of the forecasts that you will see in the package will have been recalculated utilizing the revised baseline schedules. So just so you're aware of that, that will begin with our next month's package. Beyond that, let's just move right on into the agenda and begin with CFO Annis with regards to the financial report. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm going to brief off the financial reports executive summary, which I should be able to see on your screen as well. We go to the next page, please. We start with the accounts payable, aging, and disputes report. The authority has not incurred a late payment penalty under the state's Prompt Payment Act in 41 months. We also reported no aged invoices during the June reporting period. We did have one in the last month's report, but again, that did not trigger the payment penalty under the state law. So we continue that streak of 41 months without a payment penalty. Total disputes at the end of June totaled $15.5 million. That's a decrease of $1.6 million from the prior month, so falling from about $17 million to $15.5 million. The majority of the total disputed amount of the 15.5 is due to a single invoice that has to do with a mitigation invoice. So once that issue is resolved, that amount of dispute should fall to something more typical of what we've seen over the last 18 or 24 months, more like in the 5 to 6 million range of disputed invoices. Next, I'll go down to the bottom half of this same page, the cash management report, starting with Proposition 1A bond funds. At the end of June, we reflected a cash balance of $253 million of Prop 1A proceeds. The agenda also notes that we have a upcoming bond sale that the treasurer will administer. We expect to sell about $80 million in Prop 1A bonds at that auction, and that would support primarily our bookend projects and our administration. In addition to the fall bond sale, we do have authority for commercial paper, which is the more flexible way to access Prop 1A bond funds. And we have about $343 million of commercial paper available. That will also kind of be based on categories of expenditure based on our appropriations for bond funds. About $79 million of that would be available for Central Valley construction, about $9 million for project development work, and the balance for administration and for the bookend projects. Moving on to cap and trade.
Brian, is there any expectation that you're going to need to use that?
Yes, we do anticipate using our full Prop 1A bonds for construction and project development. So again, through that commercial paper mechanism, we do expect we'll access that $79 million and the $9 million for project development.
Okay, thank you.
Cap and trade, as reflected, we have about a $2.3 billion current balance of cap and trade proceeds. That does reflect auction sales through the February 2020 auction. Does not yet reflect the May auction. Again, we'd reported $6 million of proceeds coming from that May auction. Department of Finance has also notified us of a $4 million positive adjustment, so we'll get an additional $4 million through that adjustment of statewide cap and trade allocations for the fiscal year. So that will grow by $10 million. We do have another auction, or the Air Board will have another auction next week on August 18th. We don't know the results until the following week. When we get those, we will report those to the board. We given the reduction still due to COVID-19 in fuel use and driving and things of that nature, we would say there's a continued risk of another underperforming auction relative to what we've historically received from auctions, which has typically exceeded 125 million per auction, and which totals about 500 million or more per year. So we'll continue to track that. We are doing additional analysis of the market, some different scenarios we're working on with our financial advisor to have a more robust discussion of that in the final 2020 business plan. I'll conclude the cash report with that and go on to the next slide, which gets into our administration budget. Of course, through June, we complete our fiscal year 1920. So with 100% of that fiscal year completed, our expenditures for our admin or state operations budget were $42.4 million, which is 72.8% of the total administration budget. Year over year, that reflected a $5 million or 13% increase in expenditure over the prior fiscal year. The primary reason that we had underspent on our budget was we started the year with 45 new state positions, and we made good progress really to fill most of those over the fiscal year, but because we didn't fill the entirety of those on July 1, we did generate some savings on the state operations side. As we drill down a little bit on vacancies, at the end of June, our vacancy rate was 16.2%, which is a fairly significant reduction from where we started July 1, 2019, which was a 31.4% vacancy rate, again, driven by 45 new positions that we started the fiscal year with. One statistic that I wanted to pass along that I found interesting was if you look at all the vacancies filled over the fiscal year, the authority actually filled 102 vacant positions, but that includes the whole series of new hires, internal promotions, and transfers. So in some cases, when we have a new position, it may be filled with a current incumbent employee, and of course that creates a new vacancy from that incumbent's prior position. But overall, the authority has filled a net of 41 vacant positions since July of 2019.
Brian, on the state's austerity program, is there any update on the implications or impacts on the authority since the last time we asked that question last month?
Well, we did confirm with the Department of Finance that they will implement a formal budget adjustment. Our enacted budget for administration this current fiscal year is $73.6 million. And they did verify for us that they will do a couple of executive orders to reduce that. They'll do one to reduce the budget for salaries due to the 2 days of furlough and resulting salary reduction. And also they'll do one related to an efficiency budget reduction of 5%. So we don't have those exact amounts yet. Department of Finance will work with the Human Resource Department to align those to different bargaining unit implementation of the furloughs and cost that out. And again, our budget will be reduced sometime in the coming months to reflect those budget reductions. And when that occurs, we will update our reporting to F&A on that. Because we also start this fiscal year with new position authority, the legislature did approve 85 new state positions going into this fiscal year as part of our form to function reform. And as those 85 new state positions are hired, there'll be concurrent reductions of consulting positions. when we fully implement this, again, we'll have 85 new state positions and we'll have reduced 103 consultant positions. That does result in a net savings when implemented of about $18 million a year. So that we feel has really two benefits. One is, best aligning our resources to best position state staff and our specialty consultants to the appropriate roles and responsibilities, but also we do benefit from budget savings when we do that.
So at this point, Brian, you're not seeing or not contemplating any substantial impact on your the authority's move towards more state employees and reduction of consulting costs, causing some diminution on what you think those savings might be, because we may need to revert back to using consultants more than you had contemplated.
Correct. Yes. So to date, the administration has not implemented anything like a hiring freeze that might impact that. Certainly, if they did implement that, we would see if there's an administrative process due to the savings that might allow us to get an exemption from any hiring freeze, because from my past experiences, there are warranted exemptions when you do something like that for budget savings or public safety, things like that. So we would certainly work with the administration, but they have asked us to, certainly be prudent with our spending, look for savings opportunities, which is always a good idea. So, we'll be implementing the efficiencies and of course the furloughs, and we don't believe our those measures will be achieved. But again, I think fortunately we're able to hire the newly authorized state positions, and again that does generate savings in the spirit of the budget reductions we're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Brian.
Yes.
How do you determine which are the positions that you will replace consultants with versus the state employees?
Well, we do have a plan. Generally in areas of because we estimated the cost savings we would have from the consultants. I think in each area, we do find that different incumbents change, and we have some people separate for other reasons, and as I mentioned, there's promotions and there's other opportunities. So the exact implementation will have a little bit of flexibility, but at the end of the day, we do want to achieve the full savings, the full consultant reduction as we do hire up the new state staff.
Mr. Chairman, can I add to this?
Sure.
Just in response to Ernie's question, there's also a criteria that I just want to add on how we did the form to function review, where we identified where we have consultant staff that might be better served by state or vice versa. And this stemmed from the November 2018 state auditor's review that said in a couple of places we had consultants doing work that is in places that is more appropriate for state staff to do. So we went back and looked at what the statute says about where we can or cannot or should not use consultants. And generally, the consultant work is in those areas where it's certain expertise that you can't otherwise find in state service, where it is urgent work, or where it is temporary work that must be done on a temporary basis. And so the initial review was to go through and look at those criteria and see where we can make these changes. Obviously, the nature of this project, it still will require both, but we found as we did the division by division review that we had plenty of areas where we could make the right sort of balancing adjustment to be consistent with the statute, and that was our approach.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Sure.
So just to end the vacancy discussion, I will highlight that while we've brought our vacancy rate down significantly over the past fiscal year with the new positions, we'll jump up significantly again when we report July, and again start the march down again to restore the rate to the level we're seeing now of about 16% or less. Why don't we go on to the next page, which is the capital outlay summary. So we report here again for the completed fiscal year, 100% of the fiscal year completed. Our capital outlay expenditures for the year, a total about $1.5 billion. That is less than the original budget for the fiscal year, but mention almost exactly 50% above the expenditures last year. For the 18-19 year, as you can see on the table on the top, we spent $998.8 million, and again here we are, end of this fiscal year at $1,498.5 million. So about a 50% increase in expenditures year over year. Reporting on the some of the specifics for the month of June. Our total monthly expenditures for June were $218 million in capital. June tends to be a bit higher overall because that's where we collect all the accruals for invoices that may not be submitted yet, but as part of our year-end financial close, we do a more comprehensive survey of accruals, so that's a little higher for that reason. As far as the design build work, they already submit invoices monthly, so they probably don't notice much of a jump for the year-end accrual process, but their design build invoices for June totaled $69 million, which is again, I believe, a high relative to our ramp up that we see. The table at the bottom, of course, breaks it down into categories, both for June and for the fiscal year. And you see there the reporting on project development, totaling about $80 million for the fiscal year, about $25 million for June. Again, I think that shows some of that accrual reporting we're seeing for that project development category. And for bookend projects, the Caltrain electrification, and we should see more in the future on the LA Union Station project. Their expenditures for the fiscal year totaled $138 million. I'll go on then to the next slide.
Hold on, let me ask a question about the slide 4.
Sure, if we can go back.
So you're showing the monthly expenditure on construction patches at 117 and actual construction at 69.
Correct.
What can you get us a percentage of completion on those, on the CPs, whether they're 40, 50, 60% as a percentage of completion for each one of those?
Yes. Yeah.
This is Joe. It's reported in tab 10. If you go back to each of the CPs on their summary pages, you will see that it's reported exactly there on the overall summary pages.
That, Joe, is that what I was looking at earlier? Is that somewhere in the neighborhood of 58% or so?
Yes, sir. You see it overall, cumulative overall, then you will see if you go back to each of the CPs, it's clearly annotated to the history of the contract, accounting for all the advancements of its completion dates and its current total sum, with a summary down below that indicate.
Can you give us a page number you're looking at, Joe?
Yes, sir. It is in tab 10. You will see it on page 22 for CP1. You will see it on page 32 for CP23, and you will also see it on page, hold on here a minute, I have it covered, 42 for CP4.
Right.
Well, Brian, would it be possible to put that information on this report as a summary so that we don't have to thumb through this many pages to figure out what the answer is?
Yes, we can do that.
That's a good idea and a good suggestion, Ernie. Thanks.
Thank you. Since we're going to summarize everything, it makes it a lot easier. Thank you, Joe.
Happy to do that for reporting we do next month.
Very good.
Make sure you give Joe the credit for the numbers.
Credit to Joe Hedges.
Okay.
Oh, no, no, they're just in the report. That's what's nice is it all lines up. It's very good.
Okay. All right, Brian, go ahead, please.
Sure. So this next report, total project expenditures, the table on the top shows our expenditures since 2006 through June of 2020 by major category here, with construction expenditures of 5.5 billion, project development about 1.3 billion, administration, meaning state operations, of about 226 million, and local assistance, which is our bookend projects, of about 200 million. So in total, the investment in the project to date has been now over $7 billion.
Brian, can you just, at the risk of you being able to put me in my place real quickly here, what does the with forecast mean in the title there?
I think that it's a good question. I don't know the answer.
It may be that it doesn't mean anything any longer. It may have been a carryover from a long time ago, but I'm not sure where the forecast because these are actual expenditures, I think.
You make a good point. I think maybe when you see this next month, it might be the total project expenditures.
Okay. Thank you.
So the chart on the second half of the page here on the bottom is the state match to the federal ARA grant. We have made some significant progress in recent months. Of course, the federal government discontinued their review over a year ago, but through that period, they had approved 477 million of our submitted match. Through June, we have submitted now an additional $959 million of invoices to count for our match. Again, they have not reviewed those or commented on those in any way. But we show here percentages as well. With the both approved and submitted match, that totals about almost 62% of our total ARA obligation for matching. We do also have submitted some other large amounts in since June 30th. We have actually submitted 4 additional packages that total almost $250 million, mostly in the design build invoices we've been receiving, and we've now submitted those through the April work period. So as you've seen the expenditures go up, the project work go up on those design builder contracts, we've now seen that in an acceleration of our ARA match submittals. So when you include those additional submittals, we actually get up to almost 1.8 billion of either approved or submitted matches, which takes us to about 72% submitted. So you'll see those updated numbers when we report July and then August as well. But again, we are seeing a increasing pace of the match submittals due to the work in the field also ramping up.
So you said up to 72% now, Brian?
Correct.
Okay. Is there either historically or just, I guess, in terms of the submittals, they're in compliance with the grant agreements? Is there any basis for any concern that the government may refuse the request?
Well, we've worked over many years with the federal government, the Federal Railroad Administration, both during the ARA reimbursement period, where they were dispersing the federal grant through September 2017, and then with the match period that we're in now. There was quite a bit of work in 2018 with the FRA on what kind of data they wanted, how they wanted us to prepare our submittals. We did make some changes in around the summer of 2018, and then submitted additional match, and that really is that column B number, that 477 million that they accepted. Again, with that new format that asked us to follow, we continue to follow that. And again, they're discontinuing their review of these at this point. Seems more tied up to the broader issue where they've of our FY10 grant, our $929 million grant that's in litigation now over their push to from the Trump administration to withdraw that funding. And so as part of that, they did discontinue their grant review or their match review.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, if we could go to the following page. Contracts and expenditure report. We currently have 205 active contracts totaling 8.1 billion in value. The month-over-month increase in contract value was about $368 million. That is due to some change orders that are reported in the Central Valley status update report this month. Also reported in the at the summary level in our fiscal reports last month. And also there were 13 new contracts executed. Those are actually outlined in some detail under tab 9 of the agenda, where we do list all of our contracts. And those with a start date in June reflect the new contracts. The small business rate continues to be what we've seen over the past year or so, about 21.3%. It's up slightly month over month by 0.2%. As of the end of June, there were 560 small businesses working on the project, including 180 disadvantaged business enterprises and 60 disadvantaged veteran business enterprises. Go on to the next slide.
1 second there, Brian. So those small businesses are part, could they be part then of the larger construction projects, which are the CPs?
Correct. Yeah, they could be both subcontractors to the DBs and other contracts that may be, outside of the DB direct contracting.
I see. Thank you.
So the last slide is the contingency summary. This does display our contingency amounts or allocation that was set up in the May 2019 baseline the board approved, and also the use of that contingency or the assignment of that contingency to different change orders over time. Cumulatively, on the top right, we do show we started with the 3.6 billion amount of contingency with the May 2019 baseline. Approximately 1.5 billion of that has been assigned, leaving a balance of about 2 billion currently. We also report in the table on the bottom right a contingency use for the month of June in 2 categories. We show authorizations over 25 million, which we report individually, and there were no use of contingency over 25 million through governance action in the month of June, so there's nothing reported there. And then we report as a group the smaller uses of contingency that totaled 18 million for the month of June. And there is more detail on the implemented change orders in the Central Valley reporting as well. So if there's any specific questions, again, the specific items are listed in a little more detail in that report.
I have a question, and this might be for Brian. We had talked about in the past getting more current numbers, and as we go to the ARA deadline, it would be very helpful if we had an opportunity to see those real numbers, even if they were good guesstimates so that we realize what we have to do to accomplish that.
Sure, and I'm happy to work with you on what that might be specifically. We do, what we report here is what has, in the case of the larger ones over 25 million, we report as soon as the governance action occurs to approve those change orders. And then
I'm not talking change orders. I'm just talking about actual dollars being spent on construction on the CP so that we are able to judge how close we are to meeting the deadline of our, or if we're really missing it, what we might have to do to satisfy that.
Sure.
But
Now,
isn't
I'm
that
sorry.
Ernie, isn't that part of the request you just made that I thought was?
Oh, that's the percentage of completion on the work itself. But
Oh, you want an actual number of how much is?
Yeah. What we're doing is we're getting.
I think
yeah.
that what we're
Yeah.
looking for, not to step on you, Ernie, or not looking for, but what we've talked about before, and the challenge is the timing. But so what we're looking at today are June numbers, and I think that what everybody would be very happy to see is, I mean, we're only sitting at the 13th of the following month, but if we were looking at July numbers, so I think that's what you're talking about, Ernie. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I don't know from a practical perspective whether it is possible, Brian, and I know that we've discussed this a few months ago. I don't know whether or not the information is able to be prepared and collected by finance in a timely enough fashion that we could be looking at numbers that are a matter of 2 or 3 weeks old rather than ones that are 45 days old. So, I mean, I think you've just got to either say it's possible or not possible. And if it's possible, what sort of a struggle does that cause for your department and the people you're working with in order to provide more current numbers?
Can I just, before you answer that, Brian, do you mind, Tom, can I just ask a question?
Sure, please, go ahead.
Which is, I mean, we're all in business and we know how invoicing goes, and typically it's at the end of the month. And usually, I mean, I know in my firm, I'm sorry, I have workers and dogs here, so if there's background noise, I apologize. I just don't see how that's possible to get July numbers by the 13th, particularly a project this size, since you probably don't even have your June or your July invoices in until probably the 5th or the 10th of the month. And I don't want to spend a lot of staff time trying to get a July invoice to us by the 10th or 13th of August. I just think and we've talked about this before, and I think I've had the same comment, which I think June numbers are current to me. I don't think that's at all a drag, on our reporting. So that's just my comment. And
sorry, can I just add something to this too? First of all, I sort of share Ernie's frustration because, we are about, a month and a half, 2 months behind in terms of the reporting with where the numbers are. I think it's to make sure that we're giving you the full and clear picture of those numbers. But it's not just the numbers too. I mean, we are reporting where we are, for example, in the environmental process. And I, for example, know that we're further along in reality than the report through June. And so I see this across the board in the data. Maybe one thing we could work on, we did play with the dates of our board meetings to try to compress the time further between when the data is available and when we meet to talk about it. But perhaps we can add, and you will see if you look through the Central Valley report, sort of the trend lines and what we see going forward in terms of where we need to be in the lines we need to be on toward the ARA date. But the other thing that perhaps we can do and talk about and come back to you all on is while we give you the data for the period that's very clear, we could perhaps do some projections through July based on what we expect, but those would just be projections.
Yeah, and Brian, that's a good idea. Again, it then puts you in a position where you're providing projections, and then everybody has a likelihood of being disappointed when we may miss them. by
Yeah.
some substantial amount. There's another way of considering this, Brian Annis. And I don't know all of what would be impacted by doing it. You can make it so the information that we're getting is more current by amending your cutoff date. The numbers could be effective. I mean, it could be the 20th of the month. That's not uncommon, at least in many private sector businesses. I just don't know how much that causes additional work or pushback on what you're doing. But if you did that, if the cutoff date was the 20th of July, for instance, we'd be looking at numbers right now, at least through the 20th of July instead of June 30th. And if you want to give some thought to that, what all would be impacted by doing something like that? It also resolves the Brian Kelly's concern that he was just raising. And we would perhaps be close to 20 or 25 days in stale information, but we wouldn't be 45.
But the urgency in the answer to answer your question, if we were starting this project or in the middle of it, you're absolutely right. We wouldn't need to do that. But we know we're behind the power curve right now. And we have a date there that could cost us a great deal of money if we aren't there. So as a board, we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that this project comes in on time and on budget. So when we start to look at these numbers, we better be aware that we are going to make it or we aren't going to make it. This is probably the best tool that we can use to see whether or not we're going to make it. And if we aren't, then let's plan for a contingency. What are we going to do in the event that we don't?
Well, I appreciate that, but I do think we've planned that. We've got projections, we've got monthly projections that we've looked at. We've got a budget about what we think we're going to expend, and then we have these reports. I just don't want to have kind of this artificial thing where I agree with you. Obviously, if something is not working, and Brian, I think you would know this, that if we had and maybe I'm assuming in your executive officer's report that you let us know if there is a problem with our current timeline where we think we're going to meet it. If there's a problem, and I know we had a report last month about COVID and that there were some issues there. We have an issue. I mean, I know we're holding back some contracts, so I know that there could potentially be an issue there. But I do think that staff is very aware and I think very responsive to that timeline that we all know we're aiming for. So, and I think the reports that we have, you're right, they are about, I wouldn't call them behind because there is this lag, but to have the end of June before us as of August 13th, I think is pretty good. And if there's projections, Brian, and that doesn't take an enormous amount of staff time, that's great. But I do agree with Ernie. You should be reporting to this if there's any issue that you see. And I know we're going to get it when we go to right away about not being able to meet our timeline. So I'm sort of satisfied with the apparatus that we have.
I don't have the same level of confidence that you do. Maybe you're less smarter than I am about construction, but I just have seen that this is a better tool for us for measurement and to accomplish the goal that the governor has asked us to do.
I would just say this. I think there's a couple things going on. One is the timeliness of the data that's in the F&A reports, and that's really tied to when the firm data is available to us so that we can reflect it to you, and that has to do with invoice timing and other things, and Brian and I can talk about that. With respect to the ARA deadline and our track toward the ARA deadline, I just want to say and tell the group here what we are doing, because I think it's important that you all understand this. But one, we have always said in every setting we've been in that the deadline is daunting, and it is certainly not made easier by the COVID-19 experience. So what we are doing right now is we are pushing forward on the rebaseline schedules to keep the contractors and everybody on pace toward that ARA deadline, and we are pushing our environmental documents forward to stay on that ARA deadline. However, we are also now conducting enhanced risk assessments that take into account cost and risk and what we'll have to do all in to meet those deadlines so that we can report to you prior to the end of the year business plan. We can report to you all what the probabilities are for our chances of staying on pace with the ARA deadline. And so that is work that we are doing with our risk team right now, and that's the information that we're going to present forward to you guys a little bit later this fall when all the risk assessment work is done, so that you will know, here's the picture, here's the cost issues related to it, here's the probability of hitting those deadlines. And the only other thing I would say, I don't want to get too carried away right now on the date being whether or not we keep or don't keep investments we've received. The threshold is really, are we making substantial progress? And there's no question on that. And so we'll have to see where we are when we go through the risk assessments. We will report that in full to the board later this fall when the risk assessments are done. But that's the process that we are in right now. And we are sticking to an RBS schedule that is driving the work to meet the ARA deadline today. But we do want to apply the risk assessments to that, the full cost assessments to that. So when we report to you all later this fall, you will see the whole picture.
Mr. Chairman, so we're clear. So next time we will at least get a shot at closer numbers in terms of we'll shorten that the time gap from 45 days to something else. I mean, even if it's a guesstimate that you can give us that is not ironclad, but give us an idea of where we are. I mean, we're still running at 60 or 70 million dollars a year. We know that we have to be at 150 million or 110 million. And each month that we don't make that, we still have that bogey is it's going to get greater and greater. So we need to know, at least 6-7 months ahead of time, we can tell whether or not we're going to be making it.
Okay.
If I could, I just maybe a couple of things is, we do have some of our reporting to fit into our statewide reporting requirements. So for statewide accounting system purposes, we do report monthly for the month. So there's certain efficiency there of tying to that. And was said, we don't get our invoices until the month's complete. One thing we can look at certainly, and we tried to do this already, is I've given you a bit of a further update on our ARA match submittals, where there are some key statistics for the board. We can provide, either actual numbers or perhaps in some cases preliminary numbers. But I think that would tend to be a just-in-time reporting. We want to be able to include that in the public information we post usually a week in advance. This would be more, stuff the day before the board meeting. We look for updates and perhaps, bring that to the board at the board meeting.
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate all this conversation, and I can sense all the issues with making any material changes. I think that probably what we would certainly ask, and I don't even think we have to do the ask, because I think you would do it as a result of the situation. If anything materially changes from the forecast that you will have been preparing, and now with the rebaseline schedules that Joe is going to base our reporting to F&A starting next month, if there are any material changes that have an adverse impact on completion, then we would expect that you would report that out at the very next F&A meeting. Is that fair then? I think that works for everybody without asking you to recast what you're doing or change timelines and all those sorts of things. But I guess basically let's try to do the best we can, that if there's a surprise or a change, that we get involved with you so we're aware of it, and we can discuss what the implications are and what the proposed adjustments might be in order to bring it back on schedule. Okay.
Well, Tom, I'll let my request stand, and we'll see how we do.
Sounds good.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Nancy, and Brian Kelly. Thanks for chiming in on this. I assume you're done, Brian.
I am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Joe, Joe, you're up, and thanks for your patience right now.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll try to make this quick, and I'll address some of these comments that were just raised. Let's go to tab 10, please. If you'll go to the executive summary, you will notice in the executive summary that as I walk through it, it references the page of this tab. So that will allow you to follow along as we go. I'm trying to point out the significance of each of these slides. Now, page 11 addresses your concern, Ernie. What this says is this, that over the last 7 years, we are basically, with regards to the major CPs, the Valley, the CV construction, we're just under $2.7 billion executed. Now, what's significant about this 2.7 is that a third of that, 922 million, has been achieved in the last 12 months. That tells you the pace. That goes back to the significance that Brian made with regards to the progress that's being made. Now, also, this slide is very significant because it addresses to you, we are not on a linear course of 140 per month. What this shows you is the ramp up and accounts for that of the track system in page 11. As you can see, that we are currently running a little bit ahead of our projections as we try to achieve what I estimate, again, it's an estimate, to be about a $6.6 billion to achieve ARA. Okay, the slide clearly points out that we have about 3.9 to go in about 28 months. There's the challenge that Brian referred to. Right now, currently, we are on track to achieve that. The RBSs are pushing and maintaining schedule.
Now, is that just for civil work?
That includes track and systems. The 6.6 includes, if you look at the footnotes, it includes.
When do you anticipate the civil work being done?
When do I, excuse me, Ernie, I didn't.
You say this includes track and systems
Yes, sir.
as well as the civil work?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, so where do you think that in order to get to that graph, you would have had to figure out where the civil work stops or is complete?
Civil work with regards to the type 2 structures, right, and into some type 1 structures, we will be pushing right up to ARA, where our current schedule 15 with regards to our tracking systems that we're going to release accounts for that. We have a cohesive plan that links tracking systems to the completion of the RBSs.
I don't think I understand what you're talking about. At what point will we complete the civil work?
The civil work will be wrapping up. The civil work will be wrapping up in the last 12 months as we ramp up into ARA.
Okay.
That's December 22.
All right. So when does
civil work right up into very close, probably about mid 22 is when you'll see the civil work as you see it right here about July 22 ending.
So by July 20, this graph then is saying that you will complete all of the civil work and our tracking system will begin?
Approximately, Ernie, yes.
We should clarify that, though. I think the tracking systems will begin sooner than that because
the 5 mile segments.
Exactly. We're doing that on a 5 mile segment so that we can meet both the track requirements as well as the civil work requirement. There's going to be an overlap, and as you know, or I think we've explained before, the CP4, for example, will probably be done first, earlier than the other two. And so I think we'll be working on both civil works and track likely well into 2022 together, making the 5 mile segments the way we'll get the track down. But again, I want to repeat, we're staying on that schedule for development of the RPS to keep the work driving toward the ARA date. We're going to apply the cost and risk assessments of doing it that way, and we're going to report all of that to the board this fall. So I just want to be clear on where we are in that. But that is the snapshot for sure of what we must accomplish in the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, sir. If we go to the next bullet, the CP packages, pages 10 through 12, what you will see is that in the month of June, we were able to achieve a $69 million total with regards to sorry, I hope I did not cut off. We achieved the $69 million compared to our estimate of 61. Again, overachieving, right? What's also significant though is that if you look, there's about a 200% increase from this time last year. And if you look back over the 14-month period, you see this steady incremental gain as we ramp up through. Now, I anticipate next month to be around the 70-ish, right? Still a little bit of room, but we'll be right at that 69, a little bit slight uptick from this month. So all good news there. Now, going to page 13, which is the labor. This is a very leading edge indicator. As I reported out, right, in real time, what I try to do is that the labor right now is almost hovering above 1,100, right, and increasing, right, on a monthly basis. A little bit of fluctuation, but normally increasing overall at a fluctuation. What you'll see here is that, again, 300% increase from this time last year, the same reporting. Steady increase that coincides to what I just talked about, the expenditures. All good. Now, cumulative sum. If you take these 1,200 or so craft construction workers, put that on with regards to the overhead, with regards to the CPs, we're probably employing just probably about shy of about 1,800 families in the Central Valley, having a huge significant impact there. Okay. So going to Guideway, so let me talk to the construction workers. Right now, we average just under 20 quarantine workers at any one time on the CPs. I want to talk to COVID right now. We've been very blessed. We've only had 4 confirmed COVID cases on our jobs. We've been applying a very strict safety protocol, right, which is ensuring the worker safety and the progression, the continued progression. So hats off to the teams. Even through this massive COVID, you see that we are making incremental gains. Okay, Guideway. Haven't seen a lot of fluctuation in the push-up of the advancement of Guideway. You're going to start seeing that right now. Next month, I can guarantee you're going to see a pickup of at least 6 miles in CP23. We've been able to work and to mitigate some what we call the soft soils. So that area should be opening up. And then Brian Kelly was instrumental in working with this, and then the County of Madera is being able to open and close these consecutive sites. So in CP1, we'll pick up 2 new sites probably to go to work at. So incrementally, it's working. And then 2, as you'll see later in this report, that with regards to the ability to give land rights conveyance, the significant progress we've made there. So we have utilities work underway throughout the site, which then, without the 119, which then drives up the availability of these sites, right? And the availability of the Guideway. All good news. All right, I want to skip down to page CP Real Property, pages 15 through 18. Okay, now, I'm reporting to the right-of-way delivery has been synchronized to the RBSs, and it will be absolutely synchronized completely next month, as Tom indicated right now. Now, to stay on schedule, we had to deliver 25 parcels in June. Those 25 parcels were delivered, right? But it's also important that on top of the 25 for June, to keep us on schedule, the team was also able to acquire a total of 49. We've applied those approximately 24 parcels to the future, as in to try to mitigate some of these upcoming high demand areas. So we're working in advance of ourselves. In the future also, I will be able to report to you if we have missed a critical parcel, where that parcel is, because we have these parcels, that 25 is per parcel. I will report to you what it is, what the impact to the CPs are, right? And what is our mitigation strategy as in try to mitigate that critical path impact. Again, all synchronized, all locked together. And as Brian indicated, again, this is what's driving the advancement of the CPs. Okay, now we have approximately 677 parcels to acquire in the future. Okay, with an offset, there's a time delay with regards to the delivery, as you would expect, right? That we have about 719, there are 42 differences I'm reporting here to deliver to the DBs. Okay, so again, acquire, then deliver. Okay, railroad parcels on track, no issues, progressing very well. We're able to deliver those parcels as we need them. But the big one is these land conveyances, what we call the tier one. These are the land conveyances, the land right conveyances that must be conveyed before we can start the relocation of those utilities. Right away, and I want to single out one individual, Dennis Kim and his team have done an amazing job. You can see right now that we have conveyed over 314 land conveyances. We're on track. Right? Our relationship with PG&E is at an all-time high. And there's really no impediments right now with regards. This was one of our critical path issues. It is no longer a critical path issue. Able to basically to convey land rights as soon as we have the land. Complete turnaround. Okay. Moving on to pages 19 and 20, right? You can see that we have 8 remaining agreements. 2 agreements were executed this month. Okay. What's important also to take this is that, you know, we were able to finalize 38 agreements this year. Hats off to this team. A significant amount of time. We have closed the gap, and this gap again is one of the things that is driving construction. Environmental, again, like clockwork. Hats off to CDFW. We were able basically to decrease, basically to get 3 agreements and decrease from 2 from the previous last month. Again, clicking them off to the schedule as in to be able to achieve that advancement of the RBSs. Now, another big significant, I just added this section. It's always been in the CBSR, and that is of the rods. You will hear the good news of the Y today, right? Now, we've been able to, right on time, to be able to deliver the rods, nods, right? And we anticipate being able to achieve all of the remaining rod nods, right? The next one being down to Palmdale, going south, on schedule, advancing, no issues. Hats off to the team. They're working in advance of us in many cases, as you will hear, resolving some tough issues, right? If we did not resolve them, would plague construction if we were to award contracts. Job well done to this team. Now, I want to jump back to the CP1s. Let me take you basically back to CP1. Okay. They're slightly under projection, right? They should be about 18. They're at 13. Right now, what you're seeing in CP1, just to summarize CP1, okay, the work is advancing on their major structures. That is to the north, right, in the San Joaquin River structures, right? You're seeing some of the
Which slide are you talking off of, Joe?
Excuse me?
Which slide are you talking off of?
I am now on pages basically invoicing CP1, 2, which is basically the section that starts on page 22.
Okay, well, we were at page 19. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, kind of summarizing what's happened in CP1 right now. Okay, you're seeing the major progression of the major structures advance, which is good, which we need to do to drive critical path. But what you're significant is this: what was holding CP1 bound right now and impedes its progress forward is the work in the downtown area. We've had a series of streets closed for multiple years, right? Now, if you went there before without no apparent reason, now you can see that apparent reason that they're closed is because that utility work basically from the Fresno Rescue Mission proceeding all the way up almost to the Golden State with regards to the moving of utilities is underway, progressing very well. The relationship with UP, good, not perfect, but a lot better than what it was. You're seeing quick turnaround with regards to permitting and to plan check, okay? The work is progressing. If you go down, literally, when I was just down there yesterday, just walk to the fence line, you can see an unending utility works down there. Right in back of the train station, there's at least half a dozen pieces of various utility work moving. Now, that's going to allow us then to start work on those shoe flies. With those shoe flies complete, then we will then advance that work to the major structures, predominantly type 2, type 1 structures in the downtown area. Okay, work is progressing. It is advancing in. Now, if I were to switch now, that's kind of the story of CP1. Okay, if you go to page 5 of this, jumping backwards a little bit, it highlights some of their accomplishments. But again, I just kind of summed it up very well here. Okay, work is advancing. We are pushing forward. Now, it's also important to reference here that if I was to take you to page 23 of this report, this month we have obligated approximately 2.63.5, right? $263 million of change orders. The predominance of this was driven by the intrusion barrier protection system. As Brian Annis alluded to, I will give you the board a complete brief on the nearly 40 miles of intrusion barrier protection system that spans throughout all 4 CPs next month. The impacts that we've had with regards to awarding these contracts without agreements in place to what we've had to do across all 4 CPs. Again, I want to remind the board, it's slightly under 40 miles of intrusion barrier protection system that we're talking about. Okay. This change orders here affects 13 of that, really about 38.5 miles. Okay. CP23. Now, let me jump basically to CP23, kind of the summary on page 6, and highlight what you're seeing in page 7. CP23 is a phenomenal turnaround story. It is probably the biggest phoenix of the CPs, right? You're seeing basically a $45 million invoice for this month, okay? Put that in comparison to last year, that's 300%, okay? There is work advancing throughout this alignment and more planned. The contractor has been very diligent, very cooperative, advancing. We have some designs to complete, which we're forcing right now. We're tracking these designs. I want to get these, that's one of my #1 priorities in CP23, complete the designs as to ensure that there's no impediments to allowing work to go. But again, we have 45 miles of guideway currently under construction, right? As you can see, right, that there is 629 parcels delivered, but we need about over 1,000 This is going to be the big driver. Wherever we can implement the strategy that we implemented in CP4, basically hopscotching over these utilities, we are doing that right now, okay? But again, as you can see, one of the big indicator is 500 people at work on that CP. Okay, now let me jump here to summarize of the mods. Okay, let me take you to page 33. You can see that we've executed approximately $109 million of mods. The big driver there was in the Hanford Viaduct. This was associated with a ATC at award that was unachievable, right, as a result of right-of-way and railroad agreements, okay? This is the second of 3 mods associated with this. This structure is the longest structure in CP23. It is well underway. The current mod that we put in place right now addresses basically the substructure, allowing the foundations, piles, and columns work to progress as not to impede the critical path. This is why this is being done while the superstructure is still underneath design. This is basically maximizing the use of design build and to keep us on critical path. Okay, so you'll see another mod well with under the 50 million is my guess, as in to complete the deck work. Okay, working very well. Okay, now jumping back to the summary here, you can see again is that work is well underway. This is the Phoenix of our projects. We have to focus on getting the design done. What you can see is that in regards to major utilities, 23 of 27 sites basically underway or completed. Very good, very good. Now, I'd like to jump to page 8, which is a summary of CP4. Overall, CP4. CP4, right, for almost 7 months now, has achieved basically its complete ramp-up status right now. Their 2% would be about $11.5 million invoice. If you look back, you can see that we're right on or over that in the last period of time, okay? Their actual invoice is going to be about 10.6, right? We're staying right at that 2%. Now, what's important and significant here to understand is this, is that what should be the critical path is not the critical path. That is that long Wasco viaduct. As the result of being able to work up with the contractor, that structure is well underway. The last of the beams are being placed as we speak, right? And that the critical path now is over into a type 2 structure, Macomb structure, and it's predominantly driven right now by right-of-way. Now, another good, really good achievement that I'd love to report on that represents years of work by the right-of-way team, okay, is that I received notification yesterday that the Semi-Tropic Board delegated the ratification authority to their general manager and their council as in to finalize the Semi-Tropic agreement. This will release nearly 15 parcels on this alignment. Now, also too, next month, you will see as a result of design and trying to design our way out of right-of-way, you're going to see their parcel count drop significantly down. And also too, in their 266 parcels, is those are the parcels required for SR 46. SR 46 is not needed for ARA, right? But I want to buy those parcels, clear that land in advance. So hopefully, when next month's report, you're going to see that should hopefully be within about 50 parcels or so left to go to be able to fill ARA with regards to 2-3. Again, is a very good news story. And it's a testament that the RBS approach works. Hats off to the team. And that wraps up my summary, Tom.
Thank you, Joe. Any comments from Nancy or from Ernie? Or any other questions? All right, hearing none. Joe, thank you for the report, and it is very encouraging.
Thank you, Joe. Very encouraged.
Again, it's hats off to the team. I just get to be the mouthpiece of their hard work. It is there that they're carrying the water. Hats off to them and to our contractors too. Night and day. Since I got here, night and day change. Very good.
Brian Kelly, do you have anything else, Brian? Probably not. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian, do you have anything?
No, I apologize. I had a technical glitch, but no, I do not have any.
Okay. All right, thank you. Joe, again, thank you. Brian Annis, thank you. And my colleagues, thank you for your questions and your participation today. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the Finance and Audit Committee meeting for August for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. We will begin the monthly board meeting at 11 a.m. this morning, which will also be on Zoom and on the cable network for the state. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.